All right, thank you. Let's start again. So today we are talking about scope management essentials. I just added the essentials to make it sound interesting. But scope is key to you managing projects. If you don't understand what the scope is, then you will not be able to deliver what your customer wants. And if you have, if you did your PMP training recently, you will realize how the lessons are structured now. You realize that in lesson 2, what you start with is you identifying stakeholders. And I tell my students why it is so is because you need the stakeholders to be able to define the scope or plan the scope. So when you reach out to your stakeholders and you are eliciting or requesting requirements from them, what would you want to see in the project that will tell you that the project is successful? And that would help you plan the scope of the project. And so you will need your stakeholders. So it's important you understand what scope is. So in this session, by the time we'll finish, if you paid attention from beginning to end, you will be able to define scope and explain its importance. You will be able to identify and collect project requirements effectively, how to go about doing this. You'll be able to create and interpret what WBS is, what breakdown structure. Then the fourth objective is you'll be able to differentiate between a scope baseline and a product backlog in Agile environments. You should know that whenever you see scope baseline, you are talking about predictive. When you see product backlog, you are talking about Agile methodology. And then the fifth objective of today's session is you being able to apply PMI recommended best practices and avoid common exam traps. At the end of my submission, we would have 8 questions to attempt to test our knowledge of what we have learned in this session. So let's roll. Now, the first topic under this is us defining scope and looking at how requirements are collected. So what is scope? Scope usually describes what the project will deliver and what it will not deliver. So that is what scope is. So it's not enough to say, I've been given order of 1,000 packs of fried rice without saying none of the 1,000 packs would be jollof, something like that. So you say, I am to construct or design a software that at the click of the button would be able to generate the payroll on 25th of every month and not 26th, or only payroll of maybe junior to middle management staff. So scope will tell you what the project will deliver and what it will not deliver. It is also your agreement with stakeholders on what you are delivering. So when you pick your project charter, for instance, there will be scope in it, but the extensive scope will be after you've identified your stakeholders and then you define scope. So when they are telling you what they want to see in the project, that would help you to come up with your acceptance criteria, and once the project is completed, it will also help you to validate your scope. Verify scope is before execution, whilst validating scope is after execution. So it is you have finished, completed your work, and that's when they check, okay, this was what we asked you to do. Yeah, it's done. What I just did now is validating scope. And there are 2 types of scope. You have product scope, you have project scope. Product scope refers to features and functions the project scope would deliver would have to satisfy. I have an example that I usually use, that if you are asked to produce 500 ml bottle, for the water we buy, and one of the product requirements or feature is that when you turn the cover 360 degrees twice, it must come off completely. So that becomes a feature or a function of that bottle. So if I saw a 500 ml, the same color of what I said I wanted, it does not automatically mean it has satisfied the scope of the product until I pick it and I turn the cover 360 degrees twice and the cover comes off completely. Then the project has delivered the product and in the scope that I want. So you need to know the product scope to be able to come up with the activities that would deliver that product. If, for instance, let me show you what project scope is. Project scope focuses on the work that is required to deliver the product scope. Let's say this 1,000 packs of fried rice that I mentioned earlier. If the scope of the rice is when I press it between two fingers, it should not completely disintegrate. That knowledge of the product scope would inform me the quantity or amount of water to pour in the rice, because I know the customer does not want the rice extremely soft. So you need to know the product scope to be able to draw the work that would help in achieving the product scope. Okay. Now, why is scope important in PMP context or even project management generally? One, it helps in preventing scope creep. Scope creep is different from change because change will go through the change process where it will be logged, it will be assessed, presented to the change control board, and then they would make decision. If they accepted the change, then the corresponding documents, corresponding plans like scope management plan, risk management plan, if the change affects them, they will be updated. So that is change process. It's different from scope creep. From the word creep, it means it came in unawares. So if you have a good process of defining your scope, it will help you prevent scope creep, and it will also serve as the foundation for cost. For you to be able to come up with the right estimation for how much the project will cost, how long will it take, what is the quality, it is because you have ascertained the scope of the project. And that is one of the things that WBS helps us achieve, because the lowest part of WBS are the work packages. And it is these work packages that you are going to break down further into their corresponding activities and then put estimation on them. And then when you aggregate all the estimation, then you will have a budget for the project. So understanding scope will help you prevent scope creep, and also will serve as the basis for you coming up with your estimation for cost, schedule, and knowing what quality the customer wants. What are the tools and techniques that you would need in determining scope? You can do that through interviewing. If your stakeholders are not many, you can interview them one-on-one. What do you want on the project? Or you can use focus group discussion where you have homogeneous respondents. And then what I mean by homogeneous respondents is you not go and pick someone from the market and pick someone else from East Legon. In terms of social class, you will get the market woman, maybe somebody from Nima. I don't mean everybody in Nima is low class, but for the purpose of illustration, okay? So if you put two people of different classes together, I mean social class, you will get the one with the lower class trying to match up with the one of the higher class, or you get the one in the higher class not talking. because he or she feels I don't belong here. So that is why focus groups, you get people that are homogeneous and the same brackets, age-wise, social class-wise and all that. And then the same with organization, putting, let's say, senior management staff together with junior staff, you won't get much. But if you put senior management staff together, you put junior staff together, then they'll be able to elicit and give you what they think the project should deliver. Or you can also use facilitated workshops. An example of that is joint application design. Joint application design, or JAD, is where you put, it encourages collaboration. That's just it. Where collaboratively people will come together to be able to identify what the requirements of the project is. If you have large number of stakeholders, then you cannot do interview, you cannot do focus group discussion. You would have to rely on questionnaires and surveys, and now you can send your questionnaires via email and get people to do respond. You can also elicit requirements through observation, just looking at what people do. I'm a researcher, so sometimes you get some of these seasoning companies will call you to recruit people who use certain cues. We go and watch how they cook because we want to know when they add the seasoning to their food, and they ask them, why did you add it now? Why this quantity and all that? So from observation, you can also elicit requirements, prototypes. You are having a smaller of the bigger picture you are creating so that it can help in what's the word to use? Tease out how people actually feel about it. And then benchmarking, that is an existing goal that you want to meet or exceed. So if you have a project that is similar to what you are doing, you can benchmark and take their requirements and use it for your project. Mind mapping, affinity diagram. Affinity diagram, we can say maybe when you do brainstorming and you have lots of ideas, you want to put ideas that are similar together, you can use affinity diagram to do that. So the output, when you trying to define or plan your scope, will be requirement documentation and requirement traceability matrix. What requirements traceability? So let me start with requirement documentation. When you talk to stakeholders and you ask them what do they want to see in project, whatever they tell you are the requirements, especially if it is within the scope, you will write all the requirements down. Now, the requirements you are writing down, you want to ensure that the requirement matches the project. So you trace each requirement within the project to be able to, let's say, 3 bedrooms, you have to build 3 bedrooms, maybe duplex. If somebody said telepad, you can't trace telepad to any part of the scope of the project, so that will not be accepted. But if somebody says, I want shower in my bathroom, you can trace that to a bathroom in the structure. So that's what requirement traceability matrix would help you achieve. Sorry. Now, this is a tip for the exam. The requirement traceability matrix is a living document that links requirements to objectives, then to deliverables, to test cases. Usually when you deliver something, you need to randomly test before you present them to the stakeholders for them to accept, to validate what you have done. So what we are saying is, you don't come up with a requirement traceability matrix and go to sleep. Just like stakeholder register is a living document, risk register is a living document. What it means is periodically throughout the project, you will be checking and updating accordingly. So now you've defined your scope, you've collected requirements. What is next? You create WBS, web breakdown structure. What is WBS? It is a decomposition by in a hierarchy of the total scope of work. So you have the topmost part will be the entire project. So you disintegrate it down into manageable components. And I said earlier that the lowest part of WBS are the work packages. But they are form of deliverables. You cannot estimate them as a whole, you need to break it down. For instance, if you said foundation is a work package, you cannot just say foundation, how much? Then you come up with an amount. You need to break the foundation down into the components or the activities that will help you get the foundation of a structure. You will use cement, you will use stone, you will use sand, you will use water, you will use laborers that will fetch water, you will use laborers that will dig the foundation. So these are the activities that will accumulate into the work package foundation. And so it will help you to be able to estimate the effort, estimate the time, how long it will take, and then you add them together to be able to say it will take 3 weeks. All right. And then the schedule, how long that is scheduled, then how much. Okay. So a bag of cement is X, a bag of a truck of sand is Y, a truckload of stone is this. You'll be able to estimate and then aggregate to get your budget. This type of budget, we call them bottom-up estimation. And the WBS will also help you to monitor, because the work packages, the deliverables, and then so you look out for them, and it will also help to control them. So that is what WBS is: a hierarchical decomposition of the total scope of work into smaller, manageable components that can be estimated, scheduled, monitored, and controlled. And the key point you should be looking at when you're talking of WBS are: one, WBS is deliverable oriented. What you should be looking out for in your exam is this trap that they want you to think WBS is activity oriented. Remember that I said the lowest part of WBS are work packages, not activity. However, for the purpose of estimation, you break down the work packages down into activities. But WBS is deliverable oriented, and the deliverable oriented are the work packages. 2, work package equals lowest level of the WBS, where you can estimate cost and duration reliably. I think I've said it multiple times already. And then 3, 100% rule. The WBS must include 100% of the work defined by the scope, nothing less, nothing more. Don't be like those people when they go to market and they buy something, they ask for jar. As project managers, you are not given jar. You are to do exactly what is in the scope. Then some people will say, but are we not supposed to be given extra? The extra you can give is to finish on time and within budget, or to save time or save money, or finish before time. That is a jar for a project manager. That is why your scope has to be well, clearly defined. Okay. And the fourth key point for WBS is WBS dictionary. If you are an engineer, you understand what schematic diagram is. It's just some lines that you have drawn. That is how WBS, web breakdown structure, looks like. Then it will have some annotation, maybe 1, 2, 3, or 1.1, 1.2. What 1, 1.1, 1.2, or what the other annotation means would be elaborated in the WBS dictionary. So a WBS is incomplete on its own without its corresponding dictionary. And also WBS dictionary, document that describes each WBS component in detail. How do you create WBS? You review the scope statements and requirement documentations. You see, the requirement documentation is what you have gotten from the stakeholders. Then you identify major deliverables. You break down deliverables into smaller components. You continue the composition until work packages are small enough to estimate. For your exam, if you are asked what to do when a change request impacts scope, the correct process is you analyze, you update scope baseline, adjust WBS and WBS dictionary, and communicate it. Sometimes you will see a question that says that a change request was made and it will not have any impact on time and cost. What do? Usually people will go for just effect it, just effect the change. Rara o. You know, for every change that comes up, you must log it. You must log it in the change log. Just as you have issue log, you must log it. So don't be in a hurry to say, oh, but this one, it will not affect us. Then boom, you pick the answer. It should follow this. You analyze it. You update scope baseline if it will affect scope baseline. Then once it affects the baseline, it would have a reflection in the WBS. And once it does, you have to update the WBS dictionary. If it will not have impact on the scope or time or schedule cost and scope and base, what am I saying? Cost, schedule, scope. If it will not have impact, still log it in the change log. Why do you need to do that? For future use, for future reference, for lessons learned, and all that. So it's important, documentation when you are leading project. The third thing we are going to look under scope management essentials is scope baseline versus backlog. I said earlier in the introduction that scope baseline, it means we are talking of predictive, and backlog, it means we are talking of adaptive. Scope baseline, what is it? Sometimes you come across this in your exam. It is the approved version of scope statement and the WBS and its corresponding dictionary. That's what scope baseline is. And it is part of the performance measurement baseline. Because when you get to lesson 5, if you did this current PMP training where you have the performance assessment, you'll be assessing how you are performing against what you did in lesson 4, plan project. Then plan the project. That's where you plan scope, you plan schedule, you plan budget, you plan resources, you make this decision, make or buy decision. And if you are buying from a third party, then contract comes in, whether it's a fixed price contract, whether it's cost reimbursable, whether it's time and material. And of course, you have to come up with a procurement strategy, So all these activities would help you come up with the baseline. It will help you to come up with the baselines of scope, of schedule, of risk, of quality, and all the knowledge areas. So when you get to lesson 5, that you are not performing assessment, you are checking plan against actual. So if you had a project that is 6 months, by the time you get to the 3rd month, what is the unit of work that should have been completed according to your plan? You pick that, and then what you are able to do will be the actual. And that is where EVM is very important, where you use the cost variance, CV, you use the SV, schedule variance, use the SPI, schedule performance index, the CPI, cost performance index, EAC, estimate at complete, EAC, estimate at completion, BAC, budget at completion. Then you have estimate to complete, ETC. All these are to help you determine where you are now in terms of cost and time, and to also be able to forecast if we continue this way, this is where we would be. We have X amount of cost overrun and time overrun. Okay, the recording will be uploaded on YouTube and I will share the link with you. So yeah. And then scope baseline, it is used to measure variance during scope control. I tell people that anytime you are reading in it and you see variance, what is saying is difference. So the difference between plan and actual, scope baseline would help you to be able to determine that. Now, let's look at backlog. I said backlog is for adaptive. So product backlog, these are usually you first have the features or fixes or enhancements value that the customer wants. The product owner is responsible for the product backlog. He will list it, and one or she will list it. Let me use she because I'm a lady. She will list it, and once they are done, the product owner and the customer, when they are done, the product owner will now ask the customer, see, the product team will not be able to deliver everything. So let's prioritize it. So you prioritize the product backlog based on the value that the customer places on each of the list or the items. Okay, the items in the product backlog. It is the responsibility of the product owner, not the Scrum Master. So if you read any question and they are trying to make it look like, hey, there's an emergency, unless the Scrum Master communicates with the product owner and for some reason the product owner is not available, and at that moment authorizes the Scrum Master to stand in for him or her. Yeah. But if there is nothing like that, it is a responsibility of the product owner to prioritize the items in the product backlog. And it is this prioritized product backlog that will be given to the development team, and they will pick according to their velocity. And the velocity is determined by the number of story points that they can complete within their iteration. Okay. Now, prioritize and continuously refine by the product owner. Like I said, after each iteration, at the end of each iteration, whatever is delivered or produced, once it has achieved or attained definition of done, would be transferred to the product owner. The product owner will present it to the customer. The customer will give feedback, and then the product backlog will be re-entered. Maybe new items will be there, will be added, or the customer would even say, no, this was number 7, but now it's no longer that important. Let's drop it to number 15 and bring number 15 up. They will do this, and then they will reprioritize the product backlog again. The prioritize or the reprioritize product backlog will now be given again to the development team, and then they will pick again what they need to work with. So it's important you know this process. It's like this is how change is being managed in adaptive methodology. Okay. And scope evolves for backlog. It evolves, it's not fixed, and that is why you cannot plan extensively at the beginning of project. So if you are reading a question and you are seeing plan extensively or at the beginning of the project, no, it's not adaptive, it's predictive. So I hope you can tell or distinguish scope baseline and product backlog now. And okay, the fourth point is scope control. That is a continuous backlog refinement, because that's how you control it. Whatever value you are delivering is according to what the customer wants. See, another name for the product owner is the mouth of the customer, and is responsible for value creation. And it is, in fact, the product owner, whatever he or she says, is exactly what the customer wants. It's exactly what he wants. Some of the exam traps you should avoid is that predictive baseline is locked after approval. When you do your plan and everything, once you are done, it's accepted. And that's why you can say that this project when you do your network diagram and you come up with the critical path, and which is the longest part of all the parts in the network diagram, it's okay. The project will take us 15 weeks to complete. It becomes your reference point. It becomes what performance will be measured against. That's why we say it's the baseline. For you to change it, it has to go through the change control. And the change control is managed or headed by the change control board. And they are the ones that will say, okay, we don't mind. We will give you the extra $20,000 to accommodate this change. And we'll give you additional 3 weeks to accommodate the change. So it's a change control board that can do that. Okay, so be mindful of that. And then for Agile, scope is flexible. Baseline is time and resources, not deliverables. Not that, well, we must deliver this. For predictive, is we must deliver this. For adaptive, they have luxury of time a bit because of the iteration. And so And it's not so much about deliverables being fixed. It's not fixed. It's flexible. That's why they can come to you and say that, okay, on the product backlog, this was item 14. No, now based on the needs, my needs, or the needs of my end users, I want to move it to number 5. You know, that's why they can do that. Now, I just added this common exam traps and tips. Tip 1, collect requirement is not the same as define scope. Collection of requirement would help you to go and define scope. So collect requirement gathers need. When you talk to the stakeholder, I want my fried rice to have carrots in it. I want liver in my fried rice. I don't want the fried rice to be too hard. You are collecting attributes of the product you are going to deliver. And then define scope is finalizing the detailed description. So when I now sit down and say, okay, all the 7 stakeholders, this is what they have said. So it means this fried rice must be in a pack, must have a lot of carrots, must have a lot of liver, must not be too hard, must have shito. It is based on the requirements collected that I will now be able to define my scope. Trap 2, WBS equals deliverables, not schedule or activities. I think I've explained this already. And then trap 3, scope creep. These are unauthorized scope changes, because this same cause of scope creep, if it followed the change request process where it is logged and then the project manager analyzes it and checks the impact in terms of cost, time, risk, quality, resource, and all that, presented it to the change control board and they approved it, it will not be scope creep. It means the scope will be refined, will be updated. Network diagram will be updated. Resource requirements will be updated, as well as the calendar, and the requirement traceability matrix will be updated. Risk will be updated. Budget will be updated because it has been accepted. So it's not a creep. It has not crept on the project. So authorized scope changes will go through the change control board. Then gold plating equals adding approved. It will become an authorized scope change. And I hope I'm still audible. I'm getting a message. My internet is unstable. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, you are.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So gold plating is almost like scope creep, because it's not approved or it's unauthorized. But once it's authorized, it means it's gone through the process. Let me speed up. And now this is the flow. You collect requirements, you define scope. Once you have the scope, you cannot disintegrate the scope to get your WBS. And I like putting this picture to encourage you. You can do it. If you have not attempted the exam because you are scared, please do it. If you are disappointed because you attempted the exam and you failed, I'm not trying to say it's okay. But yours truly also failed the exam when I attempted it. And I tell people, I know what my mistakes were. I was overly confident. I felt I've been managing projects. I mean, I wrote PMP first time 2011 and passed 2011. And I had been doing projects like for 6 years, So I didn't know that I was supposed to unlearn what I knew and learn PMI's way. And so when I was answering questions, I was unconsciously answering questions how we were managing projects within my organization. And I bumped so bad that they had to come and take me out of the exam hall. And today I laugh about it, but then I didn't laugh. I was so angry at the world, except myself. I was angry at everyone. And then a friend told me I needed a simulator. And it was when I was using a simulator, practicing questions, that I realized that I thought this was right, but they were actually wrong. So I encourage you this evening that you should try it. And don't approach PMP that's okay, you let me go and see. And then when I'm ready, I would schedule the exam. Please pick time, give yourself 2 months. Now I can tell people authoritatively that you can prepare PMP, including your class, 2 months and write and pass. Because I've had students, and these 2 months include 6 weeks of class. That's every Saturday. So 6 Saturdays, making 6 weeks, and then 1 week of application. But these students who passed, who wrote the exam within these 8 weeks, whilst we were doing the training, they were studying, they were attempting the quizzes, they were bothering me with questions. Jumi, I read this, what does it mean, and all that. And then once they received approval, they had their main simulator and they were practicing back to back, and they wrote and they passed. So I encourage you, it's doable. People where they pass now, one head they get, they have the same head as you do. It's just that you need to adjust a bit, stop or reduce watching La Liga or UEFA, or what do you call it, or watching telenovela, or discussing the richest footballer, money where you know go smell safe. So for 8 weeks, just say that, okay, this is what I'm doing, and I know that I would celebrate with you. Okay. So it's time for practice questions. Let's run through the practice questions. And then if you have questions outside the practice questions, I'll be happy to answer. This is how we do the practice questions. I'm going to show you the questions and give you 10 seconds to drop your answer in the chat box. And then I will now reveal what the answer is. So the first question is this. I will read it because I have few people on TikTok also watching. Oh, I should flip the camera. Let me flip the camera for them. My TikTok people, can you see the question? I'm sure you can see it. Okay, so a stakeholder asks for an additional report to be generated in the project deliverable without affecting cost or schedule. As a project manager, what should you do first? A, approve the change since it doesn't affect cost or schedule. B, reject the request immediately to avoid scope creep. C, submit a change request for evaluation. D, add the report as part of gold plating to improve quality. So drop your answers. Okay, let me just spy what people are. All right, so yes, PMI approach requires any change to be evaluated by perform integrated change control, and even if cost time is unaffected. Congratulations. I think I mentioned this. I'm sure some people would have picked A. Question 2. In creating your WBS, you notice one deliverable is too broad to estimate. What should you do next? A, ask the sponsor for more funds to estimate. B, decompose the deliverable into smaller, more manageable components. C, remove the deliverables until more information is available. And D, assign the deliverable to a team for later clarification. All right. The answer is B, and most of you, if not all of you, did choose B. WBS decomposition continues until work packages are small enough for accurate estimation. All right, question 3. Which statement best describes the relationship between scope baseline and product backlog? A, they are the same in both predictive and agile approaches. B, the scope baseline is fixed, the backlog evolves during the project. C, the backlog is fixed, the scope baseline evolves during the project. And D, both evolve continuously during the project. Okay. All right. I said it earlier in my presentation that score baseline is fixed. That's why it's baseline. You've done everything and it's fixed, and that is what you'll be measuring your performance against. I use the example of if the project is, say, 6 months, the third month, you are checking what you had planned to have done by the third month, and that is a scope that is fixed. Unlike backlog. Backlog is iteration by iteration. You finish an iteration, you deliver it to the customer through the product owner, and they give review. The product backlog may change. They will reprioritize it based on the need or what the customer considers competitive advantage, and they will make changes. So B is actually the right answer. As you were not sure, but that is the answer. Question 4. You are managing a project to develop a mobile application. During sprint planning, the product owner removes a low priority feature from the product backlog. What would you do? You are managing, he removes it. Okay, A, approve the removal only after change control board approval. B, document the change in the change log and continue the sprint planning. C, ask the sponsor if this change is acceptable. D, update the scope baseline immediately. One of the things that you need to learn how to do quickly when you are reading question is to situate the question. Is it a predictive? Is it adaptive? If you do not situate the question and you are even considering A, then it means you've assumed that the project, this question is on predictive methodology, which is not so. Because if you are seeing product owner, you are seeing sprint, you are seeing product backlog, it can never be predictive unless it's hybrid. And if it's hybrid, the focus is more on adaptive. So A cannot be the answer. So if A cannot be answer, document the change in the change log and continue the sprint planning. It's more like it. Let's check C. Ask the sponsor if this change is acceptable. That one no concern you. As Scrum Master, you are dealing with the product owner. So, and if you look at the question carefully, it's the product owner who has removed a low priority feature from the product backlog. At the point where you are planning your sprint, if what the product owner removed from the product backlog is part of what you are going to work on, you will note it. Even if it is not part, because the assumption is the product backlog is what you would eventually, as a development team, will work on. It's just that you are picking items bit by bit to work on. So you will document to be able to relate with the change. Okay. So you cannot go and ask the sponsor. You don't have business with the sponsor. Then D, update the scope baseline immediately. You know that scope baseline has to do with predictive, and the project is not predictive. So from what I've read, I can knock A out completely, outrightly, knock D out outrightly, then I'll be left with B and C. In fact, that's the one of the best ways to answer the questions. You have your 4 options, see the ones that are outrightly wrong and knock them out. And then you are left with 2, and then you can look carefully and pick what the answer would be. So the answer is B. In Agile, backlog refinement is part of scope control. No formal change control board is needed. Changes are documented and prioritized dynamically. Question 5. During the defined scope process, you realize 2 stakeholders have conflicting expectations about the product feature. What is your next step? Escalate the conflict to the sponsor immediately, document both requirements and finalize scope statements, facilitate a discussion between stakeholders to reach agreement, exclude the feature until both stakeholders agree. Is this the answer? Okay, I say C, 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 and I go. PMI expect the PM to facilitate resolution and alignment before finalizing the scope statement because it can result to conflict if you do not do that. So congratulations. Looks like my questions are very, very simple. All right, question 6. A project team has completed a deliverable, but the client says it does not meet the original requirement. Wahala. The TTM shows the deliverable meets all documented acceptance criteria. What should you do first? Ask the team to rework the deliverable to satisfy their clients. Refer to the scope statement and responsibility traceability, requirement traceability matrix to discuss with the client. C, raise a change request to modify the acceptance criteria. D, negotiate with the client to accept the deliverable as it is. So you have completed the deliverable, but the client says no, it does not meet the original requirement. Okay, so the answer, please. All right, so the answer is B. Refer to the scope statement. Because sometimes your client too can be very funny. So if you have a scope statement that has been acceptable, it will form the baseline. So that becomes your reference. So if, sometimes why you need to refer to the scope statement is that if in the course of the project, a change request was made, you have to update the scope statement and update all the corresponding documents. If you did not, it can lead to a problem like this. But if you did, then it means the stakeholder woke up one day and he wanted something different. So B is the right answer. 7.
Excuse
Wow.
me.
Yes.
I have a question concerning the last one. So from the questions I've been practicing, whenever a change is made for Agile, the first thing that I've been seeing, from the YouTube questions I've been practicing also, is that for any change request that is raised, you have to document it into the log in Agile. Rather than just jumping into action, you have to document it first. But in this question now, we are just going straight to action without documenting the problem first or what the client is complaining about. So can you?
So what do you think the answer should be?
Yeah, to me, I feel that the answer should be B, personally. But from following, because it seems PMI has their own mindsets concerning these things. There's a process, there's a way things should be done. And according to that, what I have learned so far, I might be wrong, but what I believe so far from all I've been learning and practicing is that whenever there's any change, you have to document it.
This is
Like
not
everything.
a change request, though. This is not a change request. A project team has completed a deliverable. And it's at the point where the deliverable is handed that the client says, no, it has not met the original requirement. It means the client doesn't want to validate the scope of this deliverable. So the TTM shows the deliverable meets all documented acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria are derived from the requirement elicitation. And when you elicit requirements, before you start work, you will verify it again with the what is it called? The client. So yes, this is what I ask you to do. Then you work on it. Now you have worked on it. You have delivered, and the client is saying, no, this is not the original requirement. How would you, for you to even start to say you are investigating, you first need to know if what you did is what the client asked you to do originally. And out of all these 4 options, A, ask the team to rework the deliverable to satisfy the client. How, when the client said, this is not the original requirement, you checked your documents and it is there. The rework, what will you be reworking? You don't even know what to rework. So for you to rework, you will need to get input from the stakeholder. So this cannot be option. You see, as much, my understanding of what you just said is, for you to solve problem, you first need to understand the problem. And I tell my students to don't analyze and understand the problem in your head. Look for options that suggest you investigating so that you can understand the problem well before you start solving. Often we just jump into solving. That I understand. But in the context here, it's not a change request. You have completed. You have a completed deliverable in your hand that the client is saying has not met the original requirement. And by you too, you needed to know if you made mistakes. So what will you check? Your reference point is a scope statement. It is after you check the scope statement that you will now engage the client. C, raise a change request to modify the acceptance criteria. If your scope statement and you updated it accordingly, you cannot just modify. You first need to check this, discuss with the client. If the client is insistent, then you can now raise a change request to modify the acceptance criteria. You cannot just jump from here, boom, raise a change request to modify the acceptance criteria. D, negotiate with the client to accept the deliverable as no. In fact, you can also arrive at this if this B is successful. You refer to the scope and say, oh, Jumoke, last week when we met, you said this, you updated it to this. What has changed? Then Jumoke can tell you that, oh, the other day when I went, I saw that my competitors are so okay. Then you now see how you can work through it. So in this question, B is the most appropriate option.
All right, thank you so
And
much, ma'am. But one
yes,
more thing. So does that mean that in Agile, as the project is being as changes have been made, because in Agile,
please,
when
I didn't hear the first part of.
so I'm just trying. I just want to say something, and I want you to validate whether it's right or wrong. So does it
Okay.
mean that the scope can be modified in Agile? That is, you have a scope already, but as the project progresses, and maybe there are additional deliverables and all, doesn't mean that you have to keep refining and updating the scope statement to the latest version before the project is completed. And that latest version is what you refer to in this case.
Okay, so first of all, we don't have scope statements in Agile. You have product backlog. And the product backlog is made up of features, features, value, what is it called again? Anyway, when I remember. So you have it listed there. But the clients, I tell people, it's not like adaptive methodology. They don't know what they are doing. They are just there. They are like, wait, no, you have an idea what you want. You just don't have details. That's why you have story map, you have product map, roadmap in hybrid. You have an idea, but as you are going along, let me give you an example. Let's say I want to design flyer or artwork. And the artwork, this is a personal experience for me. I called the designer. I say, see, I want to design a flyer for my course. Then the guy says, what colors do you want? I said, I'm not sure of the color. I'm not sure of the font, but I want something that when people see, they want to have a second look at it. Say, okay, you will design something, give it to us. I don't like this color. No, I don't like the font. I don't like the position. So it will be bringing, I'll be giving feedback. He will take it back. Then it comes one day and say, yes, I like these colors. So it means now we have sorted colors out. Then I say, oh, I like the colors, but I don't like the image you have used. I'm an African. Why are you using a white lady's photograph? Get an African or African photographer. I'll give you my picture. Then the user says, why am I looking so fair in this picture? Then we agree on the picture. So now we've agreed on colors. He has helped me realize the colors that I want for the flyer. We have also come up with a picture. And I said, okay, the font, I don't like this one. I said, what font do you want? I don't even know the font I want, but I don't like this one. This one is looking like a birthday party. And this is a very formal training. And I said, okay, this is looking okay, but I'm not really. So back and forth, back and forth. Then it comes, so yeah, I love this font. So now we've finalized colors, we finalized pictures, we finalized fonts. Okay, now the arrangement. So the back and forth is helping us towards a design for what is it called? Flyer artwork. So from beginning, I have an idea what I want. It's just that I don't have details. As I want, this one is here, this one is there, that one is there. That is how adaptive is. So we say that planning provides guardrails, GUARD RAILS. And I use this example that if you live in a flat and you have a compound and you brought your children out and you say, you put them in the compound and you say, play anywhere and everywhere. I tell my students that it is actually not really correct because they cannot play everywhere. They can only play within the fenced wall. That is what adaptive is. It doesn't because people just feel, oh, that's adaptive. We'll just be working, we'll just be doing everything anyhow. No, there is some restrictions. And for every iteration, you have definition of done. Before you start the iteration, the customer, the product owner, and the team would agree that this iteration that you are entering, once you achieve these days, then we can say the iteration is completed. And it will be based on what is selected from the product backlog. And you know that you would have estimated the story points and what have you. So the scope may be refined. It is not scope statement or scope baseline. When you read any question, you see scope statement, scope baseline, you are talking about predictive. When you read question and you are seeing product backlog, features, epic, listed, prioritized product backlog, then you are talking of adaptive because the aggregates of all the items in the product backlog will give you the scope of what the project is to achieve. but they have luxury of changing, modifying, adding, taking out before every iteration. Did that make sense? Or did I answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Most welcome. All right, so let's hurry up now that my internet is behaving. Question 7. While reviewing the WBS, so if I was reading this question, I know it's a predictive methodology because WBS know the adaptive approach. So while reviewing the WBS, a senior engineer notices a deliverable is missing. What should you do first as a project manager? A, immediately add a deliverable to the WBS. B, submit a change request to update the WBS after analysis. C, ask the sponsor if the deliverable should be included. D, assign a team member to start work on the deliverable immediately. What will the answer be? What will the answer be? Oh, you're like 25 on the call, oh. I want more answers. Just read and attempt. You don't have to get it right. Something you attempt, you will never forget it. So attempt. Attempter. The answer is B. Submit a change request to update the WBS. While reviewing the WBS, a deliverable is missing. Submit a change request to update the WBS. Because for you, remember that WBS, it means the scope is defined. So WBS is just disintegration in a hierarchical form of the project scope. So if something is missing, you cannot just add it. And sometimes it happens that when you are eliciting requirement, genuinely something is omitted, but you cannot just add it. You just have to go through a change request process to update it. And the last but not the least question, which of the following is not an output of the collect requirement process? A, requirement documentation. B, requirement traceability matrix. C, scope statements. D, stakeholder register. Please take your time before you answer. It's not an output. More. At least there should be. Can somebody tell me why they chose the answer they chose? Unmute your mic and tell me what you chose and why you chose it. Anybody who chose A, I should look for the person and invite the person. Which of the following is not? When you collect requirements, won't you document it? You write them down now. And earlier, we had said that collect requirement is not the same as define scope. If collect requirement is not the same as define scope, then it cannot be baseline because it is when you define scope that you can have, what is it called? Scope baseline. Thank you very much for watching up to this point. If you have your PMP and you would like to have PDUs, please scan this. If you can see the screen and send me, don't take screenshots of your dashboard. Please, I beg you, write First name, Jumoke. Last name, Lafenwa. PMI ID. I beg you, so that I can just copy and paste your names. Yes. And do it today. Biko, don't wait 3 days later to send me your PMI ID. And then I also have this WhatsApp channel. If you would like to join, just scan and join. But for your PMI, for your PDUs, if you are interested in PDU, please scan this and get me the information today. Thank you. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I'm there as Jumoke Lafenwa. And on TikTok, I'm there as Jumi Coach Project Slash program at Jumoke Lafenwa. Now, I can take some of your questions before we call it a day. Do you have any question for me? No question for me. Okay. You can type your question if you have questions. So I'll just give a minute. If nothing is happening, then we can call it a day. And Monday, I'll see what can be done. But Damilola, you have a question that is not PMP related. Is that what you are saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Please.
I was just wondering, are you Ghanaian or Nigerian? I'm looking at the name and the accent, putting the two together. It's
okay.
Yes.
Dami,
Yes.
Are you a member of PMI Nigeria?
Yes, I am. I'm on the Telegram platform. Yes.
But are you in the WhatsApp? Because
no, I'm not. I'm not on the WhatsApp.
Okay.
I'm not on the WhatsApp group.
Okay, so if you are a member of PMI, it means you have paid your membership dues and it's valid. They will add you to the WhatsApp. Because I was in Nigeria for the conference, and I got a lot of people asking. Yes, I'm half Nigerian. My dad was a Nigerian. He's no more, but he was born here in Ghana, grew up, and thank God he married my mom, so that now I'm hybrid. So I speak Yoruba and I speak my mom's language, which is Krubo here in Ghana.
Okay, that's nice to know, ma.
All right, so for those of you that are on the call, are you really planning to write the exam, or you are just whiling away time? You don't have time, you are busy, or what is it? Let's talk about that.
Okay, I have a question concerning the exam.
Okay, go on.
So for those of us that are yet to write the exam and we are attending all the conferences, attending all these classes, like, is there a way the PDUs will count for us later after writing the exam? Or
So
all these investments we are making is not counting until we write the exam?
Knowledge that you are acquiring knowledge for yourself now. Or we are not counting that as knowledge.
Yeah, it is knowledge, but then I feel that we should be able to save the PDUs also.
All right, so